Now, the Prime Minister, Theresa May, is facing another revolt, this time coming from inside her cabinet. The Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, and the Environment Secretary, Michael Gove, are raising concerns over May's plans to keep UK regulations in line with the EU after Brexit. This is according to people familiar with the matter. Now, this all comes as Arlene Foster also had a short conversation with Theresa May by phone, and the two said there is still work to be done. This is according to Sky News, citing unidentified people close to the DUP. This has all to do with the Irish border. Let's get straight to our London bureau chief, David Merritt, with more on the situation. David, great to have you on the programme again. So look, you're Theresa May. You're kind of, facing a possible revolt within your cabinet, but you also need to make sure that the DUP are happy and Arlene Foster is happy because she supports basically, your ability to govern. Who do you focus on first?
Well, it's an impossible situation she's finding herself in there. As you just heard, the reports in the last hour that Arlene Foster has ruled out any sort of deal happening this week. Now, the EU have set the next deadline, the deadline of deadlines they're talking about by the end of this week, to come to an agreement between Brussels, Dublin, London and the DUP in order for talks to be able to move on to trade. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. So the chances of this sufficient progress being made by next week, those chances are fading as we speak, and that's having an impact on the market. You're seeing the pound selling off even further this morning as investors are getting ever more pessimistic that she's going to find a way through this. Okay,
so what does this mean if you're an international, investor looking at us now? The best case scenario would be to have a deal so that she can actually start talking on trade at next Thursday, right?
That's right, the European Council.
But if they don't have an agreement, do they not talk trade?
No, they cannot. So there will be insufficient progress. That is what the EU have said. So that conversation gets kicked into next year. Now, businesses, investors, everybody's saying we need to start these trade talks now. We need to work out whether there's going to be a transition agreement. What sort of relationship is the EU and UK going to have? If that conversation doesn't happen, it's more uncertainty, and you're seeing that reflected this morning in the markets.
OK, so is it a big deal if actually the trade talks, wait until January or February? Is it difficult for CEOs because they have to make a decision without knowing what the future will look like, or actually does it matter or not?
Well, who's to say whether they can move on in January or February either? They've got to come to a solution to this Irish question. A revealing thing happened also earlier today. David Davis was talking in the Commons, in Parliament in a committee hearing. He admitted the government made no specific analysis of the impact of this decision to leave the customs union, and it is that decision which is now blowing up the whole negotiation, because it's the thing that is most sensitive in Northern Ireland. It shows again the government really do not seem to be prepared for all of these outcomes. Brexit is having so many different outcomes across the board, economically, financially and politically, right. And the government really does seem to be on the back foot.
David, I want you to explain to our global audience if this is politics as usual, whether it's Wolf Hall in early Tudor in England, whether it's Ken Follett. We're all pumped up for the Crown coming out on Netflix, season 2 this week, and young Queen Elizabeth and all that. Is this normal?
It's pretty abnormal, I would say, Tom. It's pretty extraordinary, and we're all certainly gripped within the country, and I think people around the world are finding this pretty compelling. Wolf Hall, probably not too far from it. I don't think we're going to have any public executions, but you're seeing the very tough negotiating stance of the DUP. That's what's particularly shining through this morning. Yeah. Arlene Foster talked yesterday about how shocked she was to see that deal struck between Dublin and London, where everyone thought it was going to be a deal done on Monday. She this morning now ruling out any deal for the rest of this week. Fairly extraordinary, flexing her muscle. She's only got 10 MPs in Westminster, and they are holding the entire British government effectively to ransom.